Hi there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Regina, and in this video we are going to talk about fertilizer. Now you are going to hear from so many different gardeners about how they fertilize their gardens, and I don't think that there is really any one right way. I think people do what works best for them, the amount of time they want to use, the types of results that they want, the amount of money they want to spend. So there's lots of different ways of going about it. So I figured I would add the information on how I fertilize my garden to the mix in case that is helpful for any of you guys. Okay, so first off, I like to say the way that I fertilize is more of like the lazy way. I deal mostly with organic, out in the garden with organic slow release fertilizers. And one, I like organic just mainly because I like the idea of not adding too many different not normally available things to the soil. So I figure with organic I'm adding things that may already be there and that are going to benefit the soil life, including the chemicals that will help the plant, right? But plenty of people use synthetic fertilizers. It's still the same elements that go into them. So I don't necessarily believe that they're going to harm your plant, so that's completely up to you. Now, I like slow release fertilizers because I don't like to have to fertilize frequently. There is already so much to do in the garden. I don't have irrigation in my garden, so I have to hand water everything, and so that already takes up a ton of time here in the Texas heat in the summer. So having something like fertilizer be something I don't have to do all the time just makes my life a lot easier. And I've done it this way for the past couple of years and it has worked. So I'm going to continue doing that because why change what is working? Wait, what's it saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So when it comes to fertilizers, you probably already know this, but for those of you that are really new to gardening and don't, there are three things that you want to, well, the three main elements you want to look for are nitrogen, potassium, and or nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And those are NPK respectively, the NPK ratio. Those are some of the key nutrients that your plants need, and different types of plants need different things. Like, for instance, your green leafy vegetables, they need a lot of nitrogen. Nitrogen is what causes that green leafy growth. So when you're growing things like brassicas or other leafy greens, then you want to make sure that those plants have plenty of nitrogen. Now, all plants need nitrogen, but those plants need it in particular. Too much nitrogen for your flowering plants may cause them to have too much leafy growth and not produce the flowers and the fruit that you want. So for your flowering and fruiting plants, you want to make sure that they have plenty of phosphorus, and that's what encourages the plants to produce flowers and therefore produce fruit. Now, I like to have a pretty simple life, and so I just use a fertilizer that is balanced. Now, for my brassicas in the spring, I did use one that was a little heavier in nitrogen, and that's just because I had it from last season. It was a Miracle-Gro Organics. It was like a black container with a yellow top, and it had a higher nitrogen ratio. But when that was used up, now I switched to this balanced one. So this summer, I have been using Garden Tone. It is a balanced NPK. It's a 3-4-3, 3% nitrogen, 4% phosphorus, and 4% potassium, but it also has calcium, magnesium, sulfur, and you'll find those things in most fertilizers as well because those are also nutrients your plants need. I go with this balanced one because I can use it for everything, and it just makes my life a lot easier. So when I was searching for fertilizers this year, the air conditioner is going, so sorry if you hear that background noise, but when I was searching for fertilizers this year, I was looking for something that was kind of balanced, because I've learned that that works really well, especially for flowering plants, but also I was looking at the price. If you've searched fertilizers, you know they can get pretty expensive, especially when you're growing a garden that is of any size. So my garden is, a decent sized garden, and so it takes a large amount of fertilizer to keep it going. And so I just researched a bunch of different ones. I looked at the NPK ratios to figure out about how much I would need to use, and then looked at the prices, and I found this giant bag. I want to say it's probably at like Home Depot. It's like a 27-pound bag, and it was like $22. And I've been using it all summer, and I still have plenty left. So I may or may not finish it up this season, but that is an insane amount because of what I was using. I was paying like $15 for like 2 pounds of fertilizer. Now the NPK ratio was probably twice what it is in this one, so I had to use a little less of that, but it still didn't last very long. So if you're looking for something cost effective and the lazy gardener way, then I would recommend this garden tone or something similar. You would have to search your area to find what's going to work best for you. So now the way I use this, I use this at a rate of, like for my peppers, for my tomatoes, watermelon, cucumber, I use okra, I use this at about a rate of 1/2 cup per plant at planting time. So when I was planting my seedlings out, I planted them and then I sprinkled 1/2 a cup around each plant, you know, and then finished covering with soil. And about, 8 or so weeks later, then add another 1/2 a cup. So my tomato plants, both my determinate and my indeterminate, a week or a couple of weeks ago, I refertilized them. They had set a ton of fruit, so I went ahead and gave them their second dose, and that was like about 7 weeks after planting. And now today, I'm going to do the same thing with my peppers and my okra. Now my pepper plants, I planted at around the same time I planted my tomatoes out, and they haven't gotten a second dose of fertilizer. And I'll show you them in just a minute, but they still look great. They're nice and green. Your pepper plants don't need to be like forest deep green. As long as they're somewhere between like a lime green and a forest green, then they're fine as far as nitrogen goes. The level of, the color green of the plants kind of lets you know how the nitrogen is going. But of course, you want to make sure that they have that balance so that they're producing flowers and stuff. And so with a slow release fertilizer, you do want to be careful to not wait too long to apply it because it's not immediately available to the plant. It takes a little while for it to break down, probably like a week or so to start breaking down and start feeding the plant. So it is important that you don't wait until the last minute to apply it, because then your plant will be without nutrients for a while. But my plants still look great. I planted them out the first week of April, so it is now, gosh, the end of June. So it's been almost, I want to say 10 to 11 weeks since I fertilized them. So it's time for them to get fertilizer again. And that same thing goes for my cucumbers, my watermelon, and then my okra I started from seed. Once the seeds sprouted, and I believe when they had true leaves, I did fertilize them. And okra is a very heavy feeder, so now it's time to fertilize that again. So, but that's essentially my fertilization philosophy. I fertilize at planting, or if I'm starting seeds, I wait until they have, at least a couple sets of true leaves, fertilize them, and then usually 6 to 8 weeks, then I give them a second dose of fertilizer when we're talking about tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, all plants like that. When it comes to things like legumes, beans, things like that, I did, the ones on the fence, gave them a little dose of fertilizer once they first started growing, but now I'm going to leave those alone. They fix the nitrogen in the soil. They're planted in compost and peat, so they're probably perfectly fine. I'm not going to hit those again. And when it comes to brassicas, I would fertilize them on the same schedule. I don't have a ton growing right now, but I'll probably actually hit each of those with this fertilizer as well. Now for containers are a little bit different with fertilizer because in the heat, at least here, they need a lot of watering, and so a lot of the nutrients will seep out of that container a lot more quickly than it does in something like a raised bed or in ground. So containers tend to need fertilizer a little more frequently. So my containers, I fertilized them at planting when I transplanted the plants into them. And I fertilized them, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago with the slow release again. And today, I'm actually going to fertilize them, but I'm going to give them a liquid fertilizer. And because I have it, I have this Miracle Grow plant food for vegetables and herbs. It's a water-soluble. And I have a little of it left, enough to fertilize all of my containers here, except for my blueberries. And so I'm going to go ahead and make this up and give them a nice drink so that they can keep going. But they still have, like the slow release fertilizer, it's maybe been 2 or 3 weeks since I fertilized them with that. So they don't necessarily need that today. But since I have this and I'm out here fertilizing, I'm going to go ahead and give all of them this water soluble. Now you don't have to use a water soluble in your containers. You can just stick with the slow release. But I would put yourself on more of a regular schedule, maybe every 3 or 4 weeks for your containers, just to make sure that you're never at a point where there just aren't nutrients in that soil because it leaches out so quickly. So, simple enough. So, when you're fertilizing your garden, if you want to keep it simple, just find a bag, try to get you know, a nice big bag of a slow release granular and use that, and then you'll be fertilizing, you know, no more than once a month in your garden, which saves a lot of time. All right, so we're gonna get into the fertilizing so you guys can see that process, but before we do, go ahead and click that like button, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and of course hit the bell notification so that you never miss an upload. Now, let's get to it. Now, as far as the water-soluble fertilizer goes, you just follow the instructions on the bag, and this one says to use 1.5 tablespoons per 1.5 gallons. My watering can here, I'm pretty sure, is just a gallon, not 1.5. So I'll just use 1 tablespoon per gallon. And since the scooper is 1.5 tablespoons, I'm just gonna have to estimate. So I don't have it full all the way, for a little bit of that. And then I just fill this with water and water my containers with it. So here's my container. Simple, simple. Now let's water the containers. Start with my tomatillo plant. And I'm going to put the other half with my other tomatillo plant. So that's it for the water soluble. I'll do the rest of these off camera, but it's pretty easy. It's kind of why I like water soluble fertilizers, but the thing is that if you're only using them, you have to use them frequently, which, you know, that's up to you whether or not it's something you want to do. I'm too lazy for that. Okay, so here are the okra plants, and I'm about to fertilize these. Let me show you what I do there. So, my fertilizer, and I have a 1/2 cup measuring cup already in the bag that I use. I just leave it in here. Here it is. This stuff is smelly, so if you get a lot of like wildlife in your garden, you might want to reconsider this specific type. But that's, you know, like carnivores, because it smells like fish. But I found that the smell, either I'm used to it or it just doesn't last very long. So I do about a 1/2 cup with each plant. I actually don't have a ton of mulch on this soil. I have a little bit, but not a lot, just because these plants provide their own mulch, more or less. But I just sprinkle it around the base of the plant. And sometimes I work it in a little bit, sometimes I don't. I'm probably not going to do a lot of that since I don't feel like it. But it, as you water it, it breaks down into the soil and feeds the plant. If I have mulch, though, I do move the mulch out of the way. Easy breezy. So that's what I'm going to do for each of these plants. And then we actually have about a 45% chance of rain today, but I'm going to go ahead and water it in to be safe. So let me get that done. But that's it. So it's going to take me probably about 10 minutes to finish this bed. Okay, so here is a glimpse at my pepper bed. Here, let me show you guys completely. There's a lot happening in here. I grow these peppers very close together, and they're looking great, but now I'm going to go ahead and fertilize all of these. The only difference with how I do this pepper bed is that it does have some mulch down, so I'll be moving the mulch out of the way and then putting the fertilizer around the plants. But other than that, it'll be the exact same. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this video. I hope you found the content helpful, that you learned some tips for fertilizing your garden the lazy way, like I do. And of course, any questions that you have, please leave those below. I'll put a link to the Garden Tone Fertilizer in the description, so if you're looking for that, then definitely check that out. But otherwise, thank you for watching and have a great day. Bye.